Let's talk to Harry Phibbs, columnist at Conservative Home. Harry, very good morning to you.
Morning.
Lots to talk about this morning, including, no less, the kind of the get-together, which was quite weird yesterday, between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Let's kick off with that. Let's have a look at them meeting each other in the Oval Office.
Well, Mr. President-elect and former President, thank you. Donald, congratulations. Thank you. And looking forward to having, like we said, a smooth transition. Do everything we can to make sure you're accommodated, what you need. And we're going to get a chance to talk about some of that today. So go, welcome back.
Jen, thank you very much. And politics is tough, and it's in many cases not a very nice world, but it is a nice world today, and I appreciate it very much. A transition that's so smooth, it'll be as smooth as it can get, and I very much appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Things you never thought you would see, Harry. I mean, quite a remarkable conversation considering how vitriolic they've been about each other over the past sort of year or so.
Oh no, I think it was a heartwarming scene, and I think it was important actually for the Americans because their neighbours were quarrelling. One would put up a Trump sign on the front porch, and another would put up a Harris sign, and they'd refuse to talk to each other, and things were getting quite heated, and there was all this rhetoric about saying that Trump was a monster and Hitler and all the rest of it. And I think that does put a strain on democracy. And of course, also the American system, they have quite a long transition, whereas with us, the Prime Minister's out of Downing Street the next day. With them, they've got more officials that are political appointees, and so the transition takes longer. So it's important for the smooth running of democracy. There are some mischievous people suggested that Joe Biden was secretly quite pleased because he felt a bit affronted about being prevented from standing again. Who knows? I
think there is some truth to that because he looked pretty pleased when he was announcing his kind of concession speech just after Donald Trump won on Wednesday. And if you saw the looks, or rather the non-looks that Jill Biden was giving to Kamala Harris when they were sitting on the same terrace a couple of days ago, you'd see there's clearly no love lost between them.
Yes, I'm not a body language expert, but I think it was. You didn't really need to be to spot a lack of warmth there. So, yeah, I mean, I hope that it all sort of calms down a bit. The strong feelings, not just there, of course, but I mean, it's amazing how worked up people in Britain have been.
Indeed. I mean,
it helps that it was a clear result. I think if you get on either side, if it's a close result, then you get the Americans very keen on getting the lawyers to pile in and argue about technicalities, and it helps that it was a reasonably clear-cut victory for Trump.
Yes, I think so. I mean, now the interesting sort of relationship is the relationship between Donald Trump and Nigel Farage, because yesterday Nigel Farage made it very clear to the government, and Keir Starmer in particular, that Donald Trump was not necessarily going to nod through the Chagos Islands deal, and that actually what would happen is that, having been advised by Nigel Farage, Donald Trump might block it altogether. Let's have a look at this.
I can assure you, having been in America last week, knowing also the incoming Defence Secretary very well, there is outright hostility to this deal. Whatever is said about a lease agreement, as we saw with Hong Kong, these agreements can very, very easily be broken. Diego Garcia was described to me by a senior Trump advisor as the most important island on the planet as far as America was concerned. So you're going to find outright hostility. And by the way, when it comes to the Chagosian people, yes, of course, what happened to them was truly awful. They do not wish to live. They're unanimous in this. They do not wish to live under Mauritian rule. They want to live under British rule because they actually trust us. There is no basis for this agreement to continue as it is, and if you do, you'll be at conflict with a country without which we would be defenceless.
It makes for some very interesting kind of judgment calls, this, doesn't it? Because what it seems to me, Harry, is that Nigel Farage has got himself into a position where he's not only very good friends with Donald Trump, but he's also, to some extent, his kind of de facto advisor on all matters to do with perhaps not only Britain, but with Europe. And you can imagine Donald Trump having conversations with Nigel Farage whenever he needs to sort of figure out what to do about whether it's a UK trade situation or a European one. You know, he's going to be highly influential, and Keir Starmer's not going to be able to do anything about it.
No, we've got this... and I don't blame Nigel Farage at all for enjoying it. That if people want to know what the Trump administration is going to be doing, they have to listen very carefully to what Nigel Farage has to say in the House of Commons. You
Yes.
can't. They can't just dismiss him as a fringe political figure.
No, of course not.
But on the point that he was raising about the Chagall silence, I mean, absolute disgrace, that proposal to hand them over, to actually pay Mauritius to take them on, and this idea that there'll be a lease on the American base, so the security won't be dated. Well, obviously we've seen with Hong Kong how unreliable that is. I mean, there was no justification for it. We get these advisory legal opinions that don't have any validity at all, and then you get the Foreign Office cravenly going along with it. I mean, I think because of some kind of embarrassment about the British Empire and some sort of pathetic attempt to apologise for our history, as Nigel Farage said, against the wishes of the Chagossian people. No advantage to it at all, and naturally the Americans will be concerned about the threat to their security base. So I don't think it's at all surprising that they will scupper the deal, and very good thing too.
Yeah, absolutely right. And the more, the merrier. You know, the more that Nigel Farage can be a thorn in the side of Keir Starmer, probably the better for this country as well. Interesting times at Prime Minister's questions yesterday. Some people were being a bit critical of Kemi Badenoch, that she wasn't quite on form yesterday as she was the week before. But she did manage to get a sort of admission out of Labour and about Keir Starmer that yes, budgets for councils are going to go up, and yes, council tax is going to go up, something that they sort of had to admit in Downing Street later on that day.
Yes, there's a arrangement that the Conservatives brought in when it was a coalition government with Eric Pickles, that if the council tax goes above a certain level, then they'd have to have a referendum. And councils know that they haven't got a chance of getting a referendum through approving a high council tax increase, because local residents are well aware of the amount of money that's wasted. So effectively, it has served as a limit, that council tax cap, and you know, it was for a time there would be a freeze, and then for a time it would be at inflation or just slightly above inflation. Now they're proposing allowing it at 5%, which is well above inflation. And that is a very damaging tax that affects many families on low incomes. It might make the difference between whether they can afford to go on holiday or not. So the idea that any pretense left of saying that that Labour would avoid tax increases for working people, I think really has been made dead and buried by this admission.
I think so. Let's talk a bit about business as well, because the budget still hasn't gone away for Rachel Reeves. They're still getting questions asked every single day by small business who have been told that they have to increase their national insurance contributions. But now big business has basically said to Rachel Reeves that there are going to be job losses in their industries. There are going to be higher prices in shops for the things that they sell, simply because of this national insurance rise. So once again, the idea that she said this will not be affecting working people, well, it clearly will be affecting working people, because soon there will be non-working people because they won't have a job.
Yes, I mean, the very fact we're still talking about the budget when it was a couple of weeks ago, we had all these other things going on with Donald Trump and so on. It shows that the budget is. It's not a good sign that people are talking about the budget 2 weeks ago. It's not saying how great it is. It's to an increasing extent that the burdens are being uncovered, and that some people who might have thought, oh well, as long as they don't put tax up on me, it's only getting up on business, well that's all right, they can afford it, it won't affect me. It's becoming blindingly obvious that if you increase tax on business, that does mean that either wages are squeezed or jobs are lost, that businesses are cancelling plans to expand, and of course that it's passed on in higher prices to the consumers, as we've seen from the supermarkets. So that any kind of comfort people might take, that saying, oh well, employers' national insurance, that won't have any impact on me has been very clearly disproved, and it's not just as well as the increase in tax, there's increase in regulation. So there's a double whammy there. And I mean, we've seen the attack on family farms that their livelihoods threatened. I mean, there's more.
Well,
and
we've
more
got that big demonstration coming up this weekend, I think, haven't we, for the farming business? So we may see Jeremy Clarkson leading the way down sort of Whitehall with a load of tractors, putting a lot of pressure on this government, which is taking an awful lot of pressure from all sides, really, at the moment.
Yes, and we've got. I think that will be. There's something about farmers that from sort of children's stories onward. I mean, it's very much they've got a very strong, a very special place in the heart of British people. But also a practical thing about those of us who like to eat. Realise that if you drive the farmers out of business, it's maybe not a very smart move.
No. And yet, one more piece of bad news before I let you go. Front page of the Eye this morning. Labour will miss its new homes pledge, says an official who's involved in the plan to actually build more homes. This is an email which has been sent to staff by Homes England's chief, Peter Denton, who basically says they've got this ambitious 2029 target, but he says, no, that won't work. It probably won't come through until about 2034. They're promising to build 1.5 million new homes, deliver the biggest growth in social and affordable housing in a generation. Well, he says it's not going to happen.
Yes, and it's a shame, because if you had really bold planning reform, if you liberalised the planning system, made it much easier to get houses built, then although that's an ambitious target, it would have been possible. But clearly they're not going to have bold reforms. The other thing is that would make it acceptable to have more development would be if it was beautiful, if it was traditional neoclassical housing of the sort of thing that the King likes. And they were showing encouraging signs of pursuing that. But now they've backtracked on that, and there was going to be a body called the Office of Place that was going to try and make sure that there were design codes, that the new buildings were beautiful. They've now abandoned that, which is really disappointing, because that's something where, to be honest, the Conservatives have been failing as well. And though for people wanting to get on the housing ladder, wanting to have opportunity for home ownership, I think that's very disappointing.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's not going well for them. It's still not going well for them. It's not going to get any better. Harry Phibbs, thank you very much indeed. Columnist at Conservative Home there.